Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. I'm Daniel, and I will be your host for this service. And I have to say, I am so excited for what you are going to experience today. We have a special interview for you, and you're going to get some unprecedented access to a phenomenal resource. You're going to get helpful Bible passages that speak to our current situation, and you're going to get practical tips you can apply in your life. It will be encouraging, and it will be all about how you can take your next steps with Jesus. You're going to love it. Before we get into all of that, let's spend some time with Gary and our worship team.
All right, Journey fam, let's get ready to sing together. No matter where we are in the world right now, we can still sing together. Let's start with an old hymn written over 100 years ago that can still change your life today. Don't you know my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. When darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ the solid rock, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. Sing about his oath. Here we go. His oath, his covenant, his blood shall put me in the running flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. If you know it, sing it out. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. Last verse, when he
Shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne.
give it up to him now.
On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking
All other ground.
sand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand.
What a great message for us today. Forever He is glorified. Jesus is risen and Jesus is alive, and that radically changes our perspective on how we live. We're going to talk more about that today, but before we do, there are a few things I want to let you know about. So last month, we offered a 3-week class using Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace materials, and let's just say it was a hit. Because of the turnout was so good and that group was so excited, we've decided to offer another round of the full 9-week Financial Peace University course. And it all starts this Tuesday, so this is your chance. The cost for the course and the materials is $99 per household, but we do have scholarships available, so money can't be a reason for you to not sign up. Got it? To sign up, take a picture of this QR code or visit the notes section and follow the link there. God offers us freedom, and it's important to learn about what God has to say about our money, our possessions, and how we can have financial freedom. So do me a favor, if you have a 4th, 5th, or 6th grader in your house, hit that heart button right now on the public chat and let us know you are there. The reason for that is tonight we will have a special event just for them. This is our virtual Club 456 end of the year event, and it's tonight at 6 p.m. So go to the notes section for the link to register. So your student can be a part of this special Club 456 event. We know it's going to be a good time. So we realize this season is challenging. Maybe you're at home and isolated from community, or like at my house with 5 people, a dog, and a guinea pig. The problem is not isolation, rather a need for life-giving community. We're still starting online life groups. Each week I do a Zoom call with people, maybe just like you, who want to be connected in community. We get to know each other a little bit, and I show you how you can create a rhythm of community so you can get to know some other people at the journey who can encourage you during this season of home quarantine. So check out the notes section for that sign up link. Talking about online life groups and the need for community really fits perfectly with what we have in store for you today. It's different for sure, but I am so excited that as a church, we can bring you some trusted tools and some resources to help you take your next steps with Jesus. So let's go to Chad so he can set this up and share with you what we have in store today.
Hey, welcome to the Journey Church. I'm so glad to have so many of you a part of what we are doing here this weekend. So thanks for joining us, especially if this is your first time. Man, we'd love for you to fill out that connection card as we talked about earlier. Give us a little information about yourself. We'd love to hear from you. Even if you're a part of the journey, make sure you fill out that connection card. We'd love to hear from you too. Maybe you have some prayer requests or something that you have questions about. We'd love to get back and get connected to you. But take the time to fill out that connection card. You know, we've been in this stay-at-home order for, I think it's been about 9 weeks now. And I mean, just an amazing long time. Just uncertain, strange times that we are living in. But, you know, over the past few weeks, we've been talking about anxiety and fear and, you know, this feeling of uneasiness and uncertainty that we are all kind of living through. And we thought it would be a great idea this week to kind of change gears a little bit. And again, not to hear from me, but to have a conversation with a mental health professional. And so this morning, I have invited one of our good friends and one of the partners here at The Journey, Stacy Crossan, to hang out with us this morning. And so I'm going to introduce you to Stacy. Stacy, it's good to have you. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, and good morning, Journey family. It's awesome to be here.
We love Stacy and her family and all the work that they are doing. She and her husband, Jeff, They own Safe Harbor Christian Counseling here in Northern Virginia and are a big part of who we are as a church. You know, I talk about counseling a lot here at The Journey, and one of the things we love to do is to send people to Safe Harbor to have just conversations with them. And man, they have helped so many people here at The Journey and in our community. And so this morning, Stacy and I are going to chat a little bit. We're going to dialogue over the next few moments and just kind of hopefully give us some ideas of how we can continue to move forward and again, these uncertain times. So Stacy, before we start talking about anything, let's talk about your family.
Awesome.
Tell us a little bit about you and Jeff and your girls.
Yeah, so Jeff and I, we live here in West Springfield with our 2 daughters. They go to West Springfield High School. We came here 5 years ago from Germany, where we lived for about 13 years. My husband was active duty Army, and he retired there, and we ended up staying 3 more years where he got a civilian job, and I opened up a private therapy practice off base. And so in 2015, we moved here to Springfield. I took a position as a minister of care and outreach here at a local church, and Jeff took a job with the government here. And a year into that kind of movement in our lives, we were approached by Eric Sundquist of Safe Harbor, Northern Virginia, to see if we wanted to take over this area for him. His headquarters is out of Bel Air, Maryland, and they have sites all over the United States. And this area just wasn't getting the attention that he wanted it to have. And so Jeff, being a logistics officer and me being a mental health counselor, thought that we were a good team to take it over. And so it was just recently, this last year in September, that I left that position in ministry to take the full-time position here in Safe Harbor as the clinical director.
Yeah, I mean, Safe Harbor, again, is one of our closest partners. When we talk about sending people to counseling, that is our go-to just because of this incredible relationship we have with these guys. I think the Safe Harbor has been here at The Journey for 10 years or so, I mean, or maybe even 15 years. They've been using the space for a long time. But this connection here has been amazing. And again, we've been able to send so many people to receive the counseling they need at Safe Harbor. So talk to us a little bit about Safe Harbor itself. You know, what do you guys focus on? What's important to you as a counseling service?
Safe Harbor is a clinically sound and faith-based practice. And one thing I want to say right now is, Journey, thank you for being a partner, because you are our longest standing partner in Northern Virginia. And every pastor you've had has been a really great advocate for mental health. But what makes our Safe Harbor really special here in Northern Virginia are the relationships that we have and the partnerships with churches and primary care practices. I think that the first place that people go to when they're distressed are their pastors and their doctors. And I think having that close relationship with them really makes us kind of an easy access for members and clients. I think what also makes it special here in Northern Virginia is that Safe Harbor takes most major health insurances. And if we don't, we work with our partners to provide a low and reduced out-of-pocket rate. So we want to make counseling affordable and accessible here in Northern Virginia.
That's awesome. And you guys have been so great for our church to work with. And if you are a part of The Journey, one of the things that we do, if your insurance doesn't help you with the cost of getting counseling through Safe Harbor, we usually try to help a little bit financially too, to make it affordable, because we believe so much in what you guys are doing and the help that a group like Safe Harbor gives to so many people. Talking through that a little bit, your focus is mental health. Mm-hmm. So why should we focus on mental health? Why is that something important for us to take care of?
Well, mental health is an aspect of our overall health. So we spend a lot of time on our physical health here at church, our spiritual health. Financial health is also something of a great concern right now. And so mental health is just one part of all the parts of our life that we need to pay attention to. I also think a lot of Paul's writings, like for example in Romans 12:2, where he encourages us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And I think as even science develops now, they're seeing the connection between how much our thoughts create reality. And so being able to pay some attention to that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that's huge. We talked about that passage a few weeks back. We were talking about our thoughts. One of the things that's powerful through research, and I use this statistic a lot, is that 77% of what we think is negative. And in a time like this, we know that that number is probably much higher than that. And so, I mean, mental health is something that's so important for us to take care of. In these unprecedented times, like we're facing right now, what are you all as professionals, what are you finding that your clients are experiencing more than anything else? That as they come in, they're like, hey, I really want to talk about this aspect of what's happening around us.
I think that's a pretty loaded question because I think everybody is different, right? But what I'm experiencing is that there's different levels of resiliency and functioning. So for example, you might think those with pre-existing conditions who have maybe anxiety or depression are maybe doing worse. Well, maybe that's the case for some, but my experience has been that many of them are actually doing pretty good. They already have the tools and skills. They've been in counseling. They kind of know the rhythm of, the talking with the counselor. It's not a new experience for them. And the ones that I'm more concerned about are those that have maybe never had a mental health crisis. Maybe those that are really used to routine and rhythm in their lives, and now all of a sudden everything is upset. So some of our military personnel and their families who have been through war, right? Several deployments. I'm experiencing some of them really struggling right now because training kind of got them through those hard times, right? Well, there's been no training for this. We're all kind of figuring it out as we go along. And so some of those tools or skills that they would use maybe on the battlefield necessarily aren't able to be used here. And so putting on like a mask and gloves and having to go out, that can be really scary for some. And it's increasing anxiety and distress. And sometimes our military personnel and members don't know what to do with that. The one thing I know that all of our military personnel know is that they have a lot of helpers out there. And that's the important thing, that they reach out to them, they reach out to their resources. There's so many resources among us, and so being able to tap into them is important.
All of us, none of us are immune to what's happening around us. We see it on TV, we read about it in the news, we watch it, it's on social media. None of us are immune to everything that's happening around us. So how do we deal with these strange feelings that we have when it seems like the world is falling apart around us?
Yeah, I think that there's this tension, right, that we live in. We have this eternal perspective as Christians, right? We know where our hope rests, but then we also have this like human condition, like this anxiety and this fear that we're dealing with. I think one thing we need to do is kind of embrace both ends. I think we live in a culture right now that is very polarized and it's either or. And to be able, like as Christians, to accept and to just receive that, we have the both end. We can have the peace, but also identify those hard feelings and talk about them. I think about this morning I was reading John chapter 16 where Jesus is saying, you are going to have trouble in this world, but take heart. I mean, that phrase is like, be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. So I sometimes wonder, like, when all this is going on around us, like, where do we look? What does God think about everything that's going on? And I say, in those moments, look to the cross, because that's where God is. God has come and reconciled the world to himself. That's how much he cares and loves us. I mean, the reconciliation has been done. It has been complete. I think it's really important as Christians that we have that eternal perspective always before us, because the reconciliation, the restoration has been complete. Okay, so now we're living in this world, right, that still is broken. We're still having the anxiety and the fear. I would just encourage everyone to turn towards each other, especially those within homes, especially those within the church. We are the face and the heart of Christ. We are the words, the encouragement for one another. And then through that human connection, we can begin to process our thoughts and our feelings. We can begin to empathize with one another, maybe even give each other a word of encouragement. It's really important that as a community, we are there for one another and that we shine the light of Christ during this time.
Yeah, those are amazing points, and I love that passage you brought up about Jesus saying, we're going to face trouble. That's normal. That's not something that's
Reality.
brand new, right? It's been here forever. And it's also a good reminder too about the church. You know, so many times when we talk about the church, we think the church is just something that happens on Sunday morning, that we show up for a little bit over an hour, maybe we serve on Sunday morning, we commune together on Sunday morning, and church is more than that. We're not separate, we're not away from each other, we're still the church, but we're just doing it in a different way now. We're doing it really in the New Testament church way, where we're meeting in homes in our own way, right? We're connecting through technology, which is absolutely amazing. So that idea of community there you're talking about, and making sure that we're connecting with people and checking on them. I mean, that's the church we want to be. That's the church I want to lead. And I love you bringing that up, because that is such an important part of that.
And I think for the first time in maybe ever, our families are experiencing that real rich spiritual intimacy.
Yeah.
We're able to gather around the Word and around the body and blood, and in a very intimate setting, being able to be Christ for one another and have hard conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, like last night in our home, our kids were kind of getting in a fight, and it was escalating, and it would have been easy just to zone them out. But I said, hey, let's gather together. What's going on? And we were able to gather around and talk about feelings. And there were some frustrations about school right now, and even thinking about planning for the fall. And they haven't even talked about summer yet. It's like they're skipping over summer and already talking about school. So processing those feelings within our homes is really important.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, if you're a family and you don't know how to process those feelings, that's why Safe Harbor is here. We can provide some online counseling to just give you some tips as parents, as families, of how to talk about those hard things.
And that's great you brought that up, because one of the things that we want to do, we want to actually talk about family life right now, because it is so difficult, right? I mean, it used to be, if you have kids, you could send them to daycare, you could send them to school, and you could go to work and have relationships with your coworkers, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, and you could get work done around the house. Now there are kids all over the place, or maybe you're even alone. You're single, you're living by yourself, and there's no connection with other humans in a face-to-face setting that you were so used to. So we're actually going to spend a little time talking about that, and hopefully give us some advice for moving forward. How do we stay emotionally healthy when we are still away from people or stuck in our homes in those four walls together? So let's talk about marriage a little bit. Okay. Statistics that are coming out are saying that, based on what they've seen in some other countries, when this all kind of gets alleviated, that the divorce rates are going to skyrocket. Because people haven't really dealt with some of these marriage issues, because they've been able to go away to work and get away and do their hobbies and activities. Right. So let's talk about that a little bit. When it comes to marriage, what are the struggles that you're hearing right now? And even better, what's maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would give married couples to help them in a time like this? Great question.
I don't think we're going to get through this by some major action, some great gesture, right? It's going to be through intentional small practices throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. And so I would encourage you as married couples to get together and say, what are 3 practices that we want to intentionally put into our daily rhythm on a daily basis? Maybe it is, how are we going to greet? How are we going to start the morning together? My husband and I have started this 30-day prayer challenge for our children, and it's been great. We get up and we just spend 5 minutes connecting over our children, praying for them on a certain aspect every day. Or maybe it is, how are we going to spend some time apart during the day? It's not just about connection, but it's also giving each other space to breathe. And so maybe it's okay, where are those moments in our day where we can kind of leave each other alone? I think also how we end the day is really important. And so again, gathering together, maybe around the Word, or after dinner, having a time to check in with each other. What was your high point of the day? What was your low point? But again, coming up with maybe 3 small practices during the day that you can begin to do that over and over, so that it feels like change is happening.
That's really good advice there. And there are probably many more that you can come up with yourself. And this is a good starting point for us. We talked about marriage. Let's talk about parenting a little bit. Again, what we know is that parents, I think you talked about this rhythm that's there. There's no rhythm anymore. The rhythm is you wake up and everybody's there and everybody's chaotic and running around. And no matter whether they're 3 years old or 13 years old, it seems to be the same. There's no school to send them to, no daycare to send them to. So give us some good practical advice for those that are parents. As parents, how do we survive every day?
You know, when this all started, you remember like on Facebook, all the parents were like posting their like daily routines and like their schedule, right? It's like now you talk to them and it's like, oh, I don't know, like every day I'm just living, you know, by day by day. Well, I really encourage you as families to get back into a routine. I think now you're finding out what works and what doesn't work, and so being able to be more realistic about those routines. But I think having a schedule, especially for children, especially for school-age children, is really key. And so that they kind of know what to expect, that normalcy is going to help them have like a lower anxiety, because then they're kind of going to know what to expect. I also want to say this, I can't overstate this enough, but I think as families, grace needs to abound during this time. And I want to say first, grace for yourself as parents. I talk to parents and they're just feeling like so inadequate. You know, they're exploding on their kids and, you know, they're yelling at them and then they feel bad and they feel like they're not giving them the attention that they need. And so first and foremost, being able to open your hands up and receive that grace that God gives you each and every day. Like you can't give what you don't have. And so being able to receive God's grace, remembering that as a parent, all those mistakes, all those bad things that either you thought or you have done, they have been washed away, they have been forgiven. And that it's through that grace then that we can look at our children with more openness, understanding. And then I would really encourage this practice every day, being able to gather your family together at the end of the day for like a holy huddle, so to speak, and being able to repair some of those maybe mistakes that you've done during the day. I mean, last night, again, you know, our family our kids were fighting, and it was a beautiful spiritual moment for our family to be able to gather together. I had really messed up big. It was Mother's Day, but, you know, I said something I shouldn't have said to one of my children, and it kind of like opened up this whole Pandora's box of them then getting edgy with each other. I had to own that.
Right.
And I was able to say, hey, I'm really sorry. And that led them to say, I love you, Mom, but also to say sorry to one another. So having that rhythm of just coming together at the cross, being able to confess to one another and receive grace. I think if grace doesn't abound more and more in this pandemic, we're in big trouble.
Right.
Because we're in uncharted territory. We don't really know what we're doing. Right. But having a daily rhythm each day gives some normalcy, and then having grace as we kind of mess up and stray from that rhythm each day.
That's really good. You know, I talk quite a bit about the importance of family meals. Man, our family, you know, before kids doing sports and stuff, we were probably meeting together about 4 times a week for dinner. Now it's 7 days a week we have dinner together, but that is just an opportunity for you as a parent to just spend some time with your kids, to have these conversations, to tell them this is part of our deal now. Let's eat together, let's talk, let's spend some time together. It might be 20 minutes worth, but 20 minutes is better than no time together. So these are great ways that we can build that rhythm in and see that grace and experience that grace, or at least start to work towards that, because it's always a challenge to get to that place. We know there are people who are single or people who are living alone right now. What's some good advice for those who are living alone right now and they're not having that physical human contact with other people?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, get outside. You know, make it a point every day to get outside, because even if you're not like verbally interacting, you're outside, your senses, everything is kind of being stirred. You might see people on the street, but there is some human contact going on. So get outside, get exercising. Another thing is I would make it a daily practice to make a connection point each day, whether that is by phone, by email, by FaceTime. It's important, or even like calling up a friend. You can do a 6-foot social distancing walk together. I have also got some friends on the phone while I'm walking outside. And so being able to have that connection point with a human being every day, I think it's going to be really hard if you just keep constricting and going inward and staying behind the walls of your apartment or house. So get outside and then make a connection point to a human every day.
That's really good advice. I love what you just said there, because that physical aspect is so important to our mental being. Can you expand on that a little bit? What does that look like? Why is going outside and going for a walk for a mile or two? That our family's doing that. That's every day. That's a part of our rhythm, and it feels bad if we don't do that. So why is that important to our mental health?
I just think getting outside kind of just like opens us up, right? I mean, there's no walls, there's no barriers. We're able to see God's creation. We're able to notice small things in nature. And, the word says that like the creation speaks of the glory of God, and so it kind of connects us to the spiritual, the relational. And then there's all the physical benefits, right, of exercise. Walking is really like the cheapest thing that's out there. I know people are really missing their gyms, but there could be a real blessing of being able to walk your neighborhoods, not only physically, but getting to know who are these houses. I know when we go on walks, we're noticing new things about the houses around us. We're getting to know maybe a little bit more about our neighbors. And so just by the things we see, like outside of their house, maybe we can pray for them. We know whose families have small children, and being able again to walk by and say a prayer of blessing over those families with young children. Or maybe there's an older couple that you haven't seen outside, but being able to, again, as you pass their house, to say a prayer of blessing. Or a lot of times people are just sitting. It's great now, people are sitting outside, and being able to wave.
Right.
So we're seeing faces, the faces of the people in these homes that we haven't been. So there is just a plethora of just reasons why being outside is important, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Yeah, that's our favorite part, is just walking, at least mine, is I get some interaction with humans, even though they're sitting on their front porch or they're walking. And my funny part, or what I love about it, is when you're walking down the sidewalk and everybody starts splitting up so you don't get close to anyone because you're afraid you may.
But have you noticed that there's generosity in that? People are even like preempting it.
Yeah.
I think people are there's a real kindness that is coming out during this time. Like, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And I think we're just being more empathetic towards one another. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
And for us, I'm starting to see some of the people like you from our church who live in our neighborhood that I didn't know about that. So it's been nice to pass you and to see you on the streets there. Let's go back to that resiliency idea again. Let's talk through that. Why is that important when it comes to our mental health? How is that going to help us, not just mentally, but maybe even spiritually?
Well, resiliency means that you bounce back. So when you're hit with something, like how soon can you kind of bounce back? And so resiliency is important, especially during this time, so that we can, when we're hit with a challenge or a difficulty, what are the things that help us bounce back? And number one, right, is our relationship with God. Being able to, again, like I said before, look at what does God think about everything that's going on? Look at the cross. God has said that there is going to be trouble in this world, but I have overcome the world. And so being able to focus in on what God thinks, that He loves us, that He has restored us, and then being able to look at the helpers around us. Again, community is really important. Reaching out to your helpers, whether it's your pastor, your doctor, safe harbor, counselors, friends, mentors, extended family members. You're not in this alone. It's really important. And then looking at other tools. And so I know you had that series a couple weeks ago, or the conversation about your thoughts. Really getting in touch with, like, what are we telling ourselves about this situation? Like, even though you mentioned the statistics that there are going to be like maybe more divorces after this. Well, not necessarily,
Right.
We can think differently about that.
Right.
And especially if we kind of get ahead of it. So if you are a marriage or a family that is struggling, this is the time I think maybe that you could be able to have some sessions. You're not having to go anywhere. You're not having to get childcare. And I just think it's a good time to maybe say, hey, we need some tools in this area. And then being able to meet with a counselor for a few sessions. I think of it as like you take your car in, for a tune-up. This might just be a great time where God has given us this holy pause where we can be able to evaluate a little bit and say, hey, let's invest a little bit more into this because we have the time to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I talk about checkups all the time. Kara and I go in for checkups quite frequently, and this is a great time to be able to do that. And any last thoughts, any last bits of advice that you would give us right now?
I think I said this before, but I really want to emphasize it, that we are not going to get through this, like as a church, by a big program. And we're not going to get through this as a family with like big gestures. What it's going to take is small intentional practices over and over. You may think that, what will talking to my spouse for 2 minutes a day in the morning to connect, like how is that really going to impact us? But if you take it over the course of a month, there's some really like good conversation that's happening there. Or what's going to make the difference if we gather our family at the end of each night to talk about our highs and lows? Well, over the course of a month, you're really going to get to know the inner workings of your children and of your partner. And so it's these small intentional practices. And finally, again, I can't emphasize this more, is that grace needs to abound. Grace needs to be bigger than this pandemic. And it's the message that we have. It's the lens that we can see all that is going on around us. That we keep our eyes focused on the cross, where grace abounds, and where perfect love casts out all that fear. So being able to keep that eternal perspective. I know that might seem kind of cliche, but honestly, it is the only thing some days that like keeps me rooted. Like I don't know what people do without faith right now. It can be very terrifying. But I always go back that, love is with us. God is love, and in perfect love casts out fear.
Yeah. Yeah, that you say that, and it takes me back to 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not self-seeking. And so maybe we just need to go back and read that, just kind of soak that in right now. It's like, oh, this is what love looks like right now with what we're going through, and beyond just right now, but specifically right now. So
my daughter has personalized that verse,
I love that.
with your name. Like
Yeah.
Stacy is patient.
Yeah.
Stacy,
Oh, I like
right?
that, yeah.
And so it kind of like helps remind you like whose you are
Yeah.
and what you are. Yeah.
Stacy, you guys are awesome to work
No,
with.
you guys are too.
We love being in a partnership with you and your counselors. You do amazing work. My family loves you and Jeff and your girls. You guys are good friends, and we appreciate the time that we get to spend with you and know you even more. Thank you for your time today. Thanks for sharing with us, because this is such an important aspect that so many of us are struggling with right now. And I hope for you there was some good advice that you can take. Look, if you just take one thing that Stacy shared with us today and put that into practice, it will change your life. It'll go back to Romans 12. It'll transform the way that you think, and that really is what this is all about. But I do want to say this last thing to you. Listen to me, if you right now, if you are struggling with any of these things that we've talked about, if you just need a checkup, we would love to get you connected. There on your chat screen, we're going to put up a button right now that's going to invite you to just get more information about Safe Harbor. And so we would love for you to click that on. No one else knows about this. This goes to one person, and they get this information. They will connect you with Safe Harbor's intake department, and then we'll get you started down that path. Maybe you just need to go in for a couple of checkup conversations with a professional. That's worth it. I promise you it's worth it. Maybe there's more that you need to chat through. Maybe there's more that you and your spouse need to chat through. And so we would love to connect you with this team and to get you in there. But this is Safe Harbor Christian Counseling. Great organization, great people who are running it, and we partner with them. But thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Stacy, for joining us. We appreciate it. And now we're going to run into a time of communion.
we see the first followers of Jesus in the New Testament. They had this rhythm of teaching and fellowship. They would learn together, perhaps read one of the books in our New Testament. It acted as a circular letter they would send to these house churches of believers all over. And then they would have this fellowship meal that we call communion or the Lord's Supper. Jesus instructed his disciples the night before he was crucified that whenever they gather together with other believers, that they would do this sacrament. They would do this act of worship in remembrance of him. That's why together we take these elements. Together we remember his body that was broken for us. And together we remember his blood that was shed for us. Let's pray together. Our God in heaven, thank you for this time and thank you for this message today. God, I pray that you would soften our hearts. Would you open up lines of communication? Would you allow us to do the work on our hearts, on our mental capacity, to be able to talk about what's going on, to talk about this world that we have right now. And so God, would you allow us to make those next steps? Would you allow us to talk with someone? Would you allow us to process what we need to? Would you help us to change our minds daily as we renew through your word and through prayer and through nature? Help us grow in you in this time. God, I pray that you would protect us. Would you be with each and every one of us? Would you allow us to be your agents of change and hope and life in this world? May those that we work with and have Zoom calls with and that we pass on the sidewalk, would they see a change in us? So much so that they would ask why we have hope even in this moment. And God, may we be prepared to share with everyone we come in contact with how great you are, how good you are, how you have saved us. We ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus. It's because of him that we pray. Amen. If the Journey is your church home and you want to give, you can click on the Give button on your screen. If not, if you are new here, please know that this is our gift to you. There is no obligation at all. But thank you for those that are giving so faithfully and allowing us to continue the work of helping people take their next steps with Jesus. Share this with a friend or family member, maybe a neighbor or coworker, and invite them to catch our next service with you. Don't forget about registering for the Financial Peace class, and I hope you have a fantastic week. See you next time.